80th anniversary, VE Day. But at what cost? 8th of May 1945. The war in Europe was over. Britain was bankrupt. Its population shattered but not beaten. Hollow-eyed, exhausted men, aged beyond their years, returned home from the war. They had survived, but many had not. Their horrific experience would haunt them for the remainder of their days. In Britain, almost every able-bodied man between the ages of 18 and 51 who wasn't doing essential war work had been called up. 5.1 million people were in the armed forces. Men and women on the home front had suffered too. The bombings, extreme food rationing, long hours working in factories to produce the machines of war, husbands and sons away fighting a war from which they may not return. 22.75 million British men and women were in the armed forces, civil defence or doing essential war work. 3,750,000 children and women had been evacuated from cities and coastal areas at risk of bombing or invasion. Food was in short supply. Basic foods, butter, margarine, bacon, ham, meat, cheese, eggs, milk, tea, sugar, rice, biscuits, tinned goods, clothes, electricity, coal and gas were rationed and would continue to be rationed for many years after the war. British cities had been devastated by heavy bombing rage. Large parts of London, Liverpool, Portsmouth, Plymouth, Hull, Birmingham, Glasgow, Coventry, Belfast and Nottingham had been destroyed by German bombers. London had endured 57 consecutive nights of bombing. British cities of cultural and historical significance, Canterbury, Exeter, Bath, Norwich and York, which had no strategic or military value whatsoever, had been bombed in revenge attacks. Over 52,000 civilians had been killed in bombing raids by German aircraft. Over 500,000 houses had been destroyed and many more were seriously damaged. To bring food, fuel and war supplies to our shores, over 30,000 merchant seamen had died. 2,779 merchant ships totalling 14 million tons had been sunk. Evacuating the British Expeditionary Force from Dunkirk had been a great success, but at the cost of 68,000 men killed, wounded or taken prisoner. Many would spend 5 years in prisoner of war camps. Unlike the movies where you only see officer prison camps, they were forced to work in harsh conditions. During the Dunkirk evacuation, the Royal Air Force lost 106 fighter planes. The Royal Navy lost 6 destroyers, 8 personnel ships, 1 hospital ship, 22 minesweepers and 188 smaller vessels. The RAF had won the Battle of Britain and saved Britain from being invaded, but the cost was high. Only half of our pilots had survived. 544 pilots were killed and 1,547 aircraft had been lost. Throughout the war, RAF Fighter Command lost 4,790 aircraft with 3,690 pilots killed. RAF Bomber Command lost 8,325 aircraft with over 55,573 aircrew killed, a 44% death rate and many taken prisoners. Following the successful D-Day landings, British casualties had been high, with some units having a 300% casualty rate. 3.5 million men and women served in the British Army, which suffered almost 750,000 casualties. The Royal Navy suffered 50,000 men killed. Bankrupt and close to collapse, Britain took out loans with interest from the USA and Canada. It would take 61 years to repay these debts, which were finally settled in 2006. This is why we remember the men and women of the British Commonwealth Armed Forces who fought in World War II, and also those on the home front whose blood, sweat, toil and tears assured victory over tyranny.